Laos is a land of rivers, mountains, and ancient traditions. But beneath the surface of its culture and history lies something even more fascinating. A hidden story written in the DNA of its people. A story that could completely change everything we thought we knew about this mysterious land. For years, historians believed that the Lao people were just one branch of the Great Thai Migration from China, that they arrived in present-day Laos only about 1,000 years ago. But what if that was only half the truth? What if the real origins of the Lao people stretched back not just centuries, but tens of thousands of years? Recent breakthroughs in genetic research have revealed a stunning secret. Laos has been inhabited for at least 50,000 years, long before the rise of ancient kingdoms, before the temples of Luang Prabang, before written history itself. There were people here, and their DNA is still alive today. But here's where it gets even stranger. When scientists analyzed the genes of modern Lao people, they discovered something shocking. The male and female ancestry don't match. The Y chromosome, which is passed from father to son, shows a strong connection to ancient Austroasiatic populations, people who lived in Southeast Asia long before the Thai migrations. But the mitochondrial DNA, which comes from mothers, tells a completely different story. It suggests a history of intermarriage, with migrants from southern China and beyond. What does this mean? It means that the Lao people aren't just one group that arrived from China. They are a fusion of civilizations, a genetic time capsule of the past, carrying the bloodlines of the first humans in Southeast Asia and the waves of people who came after them. And here's something even more bizarre. Scientists have found clues in the DNA of Laotian fish that may hold the key to understanding early human migration. There are genes linked to saltwater survival that have rapidly contracted in modern Laos. But why? Does this mean that the ancestors of the Lao people once lived by the sea before they moved inland? Or is it evidence of a long-lost trade network that connected them to the coasts of Vietnam and beyond? But perhaps the most urgent discovery isn't about the past. It's about the future. Laos is changing. Modernization, migration, and economic shifts are rapidly reshaping its population. Genetic diversity is being lost. Some ancient bloodlines are disappearing entirely. And if they vanish, so will a part of history that can never be recovered. That's why researchers are racing against time, using cutting-edge DNA analysis to track these genetic changes. Every strand of DNA tells a story, and if they can preserve it, future generations will know where they came from. So, next time you walk the streets of Vientiane, visit the temples of Luang Prabang, or watch fishermen along the Mekong, remember this: the true history of Laos isn't just written in books. It's written in the blood of its people. Laos, a landlocked country, isolated by mountains and rivers, far from the great empires of history. Or at least, that's what we thought. But recent genetic research has revealed something extraordinary, a secret link between the people of Laos and some of the most powerful ancient civilizations of Asia. For centuries, historians have focused on the rise of kingdoms like Lanzang, assuming that the Lao people emerged from a simple migration of Thai tribes. But DNA tells a different story. It reveals a deep and unexpected connection, one that stretches across China, India, and even beyond Southeast Asia. Scientists studying Y chromosomes and mitochondrial DNA have uncovered traces of genetic markers that connect modern Laotians not just to their Taikadai ancestors, but to Austroasiatic, Sino-Tibetan, and even South Asian populations. How is this possible? The answer lies in history, a history of migration, war, and trade that shaped the Lao people into something far more complex than anyone ever imagined. Centuries ago, Laos was not as isolated as we once believed. Genetic evidence suggests that waves of migration from India and China influenced its population long before recorded history. Traders, explorers, and warriors brought not just goods, but also genes, blending their bloodlines with the local inhabitants. The Mon, the Khmer, and even distant Indian and Persian traders may have played a role in shaping the very people who now call Laos home. One of the most striking pieces of evidence comes from a genetic link to the Mon people, one of Southeast Asia's oldest civilizations. The Mon were known for their grand cities, intricate writing system, and influence over early Thai and Lao cultures. But DNA reveals something even more surprising. Many Laotians carry genetic markers that connect them directly to the Mon, suggesting deep ancestral ties that go beyond language and culture. Could the foundation of Laos itself have been built on an ancient Mon civilization? But that's not all. Some genetic studies have also identified traces of haplogroups commonly found in India and the Middle East. This means that Laos may have had trade and migration links to civilizations as far as Persia and South Asia. The famous Dvaravati culture, which thrived in what is now Thailand, had strong Indian influences. Could it have also shaped the early peoples of Laos? If so, the roots of the Lao people are far older and more diverse than anyone ever imagined. Even the physical features of ancient Lao statues and carvings hint at a mixture of influences, combining elements of Mon, Khmer, Indian, and Chinese art styles. Was this merely cultural borrowing, or does it reflect something deeper? A genetic legacy left behind by centuries of contact with these powerful civilizations? The deeper we look into the DNA of the Lao people, the more we realize that their history is not a simple story of migration. It is a tapestry woven with the threads of countless cultures, bloodlines, and forgotten journeys. And yet, despite this incredible diversity, the Lao identity remains strong. A people who carry within them the legacy of countless civilizations, but who have carved out a culture that is uniquely their own. The DNA of Laos is more than just a record of the past. It is a living proof of history itself. And if we can decode it fully, we may uncover secrets about ancient migrations that could change the way we understand the entire history of Southeast Asia. For years, historians believed they had the story of the Lao people figured out. A simple migration, Thai tribes moving southward from China, settling in Laos, and forming a kingdom. But now, DNA is telling us something completely different. Hidden deep within the genetic code of the Lao people is evidence of a forgotten migration, one that reshapes everything we thought we knew about their origins. This is not just the movement of a single group. It's a centuries-long journey that involved multiple civilizations, lost bloodlines, and unexpected connections across Asia. Scientists analyzing the Y chromosome of modern Lao males discovered something astonishing. A significant percentage of their genetic markers do not originate from the Thai-Kadai migration at all. Instead, these markers point to older populations that predate the Thai arrival, Austroasiatic groups, ancient Mon settlers, and even traces of influences from Tibet and India. This means the Lao people are not just descendants of Thai migrants, but a fusion of multiple lost migrations that shaped the region long before the rise of Lanzang. And it's not just paternal DNA. When researchers examined mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down from mother to child, they found even more diversity. Certain markers linked to Sino-Tibetan and Austroasiatic-speaking hill tribes appear frequently, indicating a deep maternal ancestry that stretches far beyond the Thai migration. This suggests that early Lao ancestors may have intermarried with indigenous groups, blending different cultures into a single identity. But the most mysterious discovery? A genetic footprint connecting the Lao people to populations far to the west, South Asia, the Middle East, and beyond. Traces of haplogroups commonly found in Indian and Persian communities appear in a small but consistent percentage of Lao DNA. Could this be evidence of an ancient trade route, forgotten migrations, or even early explorers settling in the region? The presence of these genetic markers raises more questions than answers. Another intriguing piece of this puzzle comes from the Khmu people, one of the oldest ethnic groups in Laos. Their DNA suggests that they have been in the region for thousands of years, long before the arrival of the Thai-speaking ancestors of the Lao. Yet, despite their deep roots, genetic studies show signs of mixing between the Khmu and early Lao populations, meaning that the formation of the Lao identity was not a simple conquest, but a gradual blending of different peoples over generations. There's also an unexpected twist hidden in the genetic data of the Laotian people in Thailand. Even though they identify as ethnic Lao, their DNA carries a unique signature, revealing a different mixture of ancestral groups compared to the Lao of Laos. This suggests that the migrations that shaped the Lao people didn't stop at national borders. They continued to evolve separately in different regions, influenced by geography, politics, and time. So what does this all mean? It means that the Lao people are not just the product of one migration, but of many waves of movement, adaptation, and integration across thousands of years. Their story is not just about one tribe. It's about many tribes, many peoples, all coming together to form something entirely new. This lost migration challenges the traditional narrative. It forces us to rethink not just where the Lao people came from, but how they became who they are today. And as DNA research advances, we may uncover even more connections, more lost histories, and more forgotten migrations waiting to be rediscovered. Deep within the mist-covered mountains of Laos, an ancient secret has been preserved for thousands of years, not in temples, not in lost manuscripts, but in the very DNA of the people who call these highlands home. While the world focuses on the Lao of the river valleys, the true key to the region's past may be hidden in the genes of its forgotten hill tribes. Geneticists analyzing the DNA of these remote communities, the Khmu, the Tin, the Lawa, and the Palong, have uncovered something extraordinary. Unlike the mainstream Lao population, whose DNA shows clear influences from the Taikadai expansion, these groups carry markers that trace back to some of the earliest humans to ever set foot in Southeast Asia. Some genetic signatures suggest an unbroken lineage going back more than 40,000 years, making these tribes living relics of an ancient world. But here's where things get even stranger. Unlike the lowland Lao, whose DNA has mixed with multiple incoming migrations, the genetic structure of the highland tribes has remained remarkably intact. This suggests that while civilizations rose and fell around them, these groups stayed relatively isolated, preserving a genetic blueprint that might be the closest thing we have to the original inhabitants of the region. Yet, isolation did not mean stagnation. When scientists examined the Y chromosome data of these tribes, passed from father to son, they found a striking genetic division between patrilocal and matrilocal communities. In some hill tribes, men stay in their birth villages, and women move in after marriage. In others, it's the reverse. This difference has left a clear mark on their DNA. Matrilocal tribes show greater maternal diversity, while patrilocal tribes are more genetically uniform on the paternal side. And then comes the biggest surprise. The Lawa people, despite their cultural uniqueness, carry genetic markers that connect them not to the Lao, but to populations as far away as India and the Tibetan Plateau. Could this mean an ancient migration, long before recorded history, that brought people from the far west into Laos? Even more mysterious is the Mlabri tribe, a small nomadic group with an unusual genetic signature. Unlike other hill tribes, their DNA shows an extreme genetic bottleneck, a sign that their ancestors may have gone through a drastic population collapse, leaving only a handful of survivors. This is not just a rare occurrence. It's something geneticists usually see in species on the brink of extinction. Yet the Mlabri somehow persisted, carrying their unique heritage into the modern era. This genetic puzzle forces us to ask, how many lost migrations shaped the land before the Lao kingdom even existed? What forgotten cultures once thrived in these mountains, their only legacy preserved in DNA? And could the highland tribes be the last living connection to civilization, so ancient that history has completely erased its name? The mountains of Laos are more than just a landscape. They are a time capsule. And within the people who have lived there for millennia, we may have just found one of the oldest and most untouched genetic archives in all of Southeast Asia. Beneath the modern borders of Laos lies a forgotten past, a history that was never written in books, yet remains etched in the DNA of its people. While the world remembers the mighty Khmer Empire and the legendary Lan Kingdom, genetic evidence tells a deeper, untold story, one of vanished rulers, displaced civilizations, and ancient bloodlines that still flow through the people of Laos today. For centuries, historians have debated, who were the first true rulers of this land? Were they the ancestors of the modern Lao? Or was there a more mysterious force that shaped the region long before recorded history? Recent genetic studies suggest that the answer lies in the movement of DNA, not armies. Scientists examining Y chromosome lineages have found a striking pattern. An ancient ruling class, completely different from the common people, once existed in this region. Unlike the widespread genetic signatures found among farmers and villagers, these elite bloodlines are rare, almost disappearing as time passed. Some of these markers resemble those found in the Mon and Khmer people, suggesting that before the Lao dominated the region, another civilization ruled these lands, perhaps even a lost kingdom that predated Lan Xang. But then something changed. Between 1,500 and 2,000 years ago, a powerful wave of migration reshaped the genetic landscape of Laos. A new lineage appeared, one that can be traced back to southern China. This was the arrival of the Taikadai people, the ancestors of the modern Lao. But did they arrive as conquerors or as traders who gradually took power? DNA evidence reveals something unexpected. Rather than a violent overthrow, there was a slow blending of civilizations. The ruling elites of the past intermarried with the incoming Taikadai groups, creating a hybrid lineage that would eventually form the foundation of the Lao monarchy. This suggests that instead of war, it was strategic alliances and royal marriages that forged the identity of the Lao people. Yet one mystery remains. Deep in the genetic code of some Laotians, scientists have found traces of a lost bloodline, one that does not match the modern Lao, Khmer, or Thai groups. It is as if an entire civilization once ruled here, only to be swallowed by history. Could this be the last genetic trace of an empire that fell before Lan Xang ever rose? This forgotten lineage still lingers in the DNA of some hill tribes and isolated communities, whispering of a time when a different people held power. But their story has no written records, no ancient ruins to tell of their greatness. Only their genes remain, a silent testament to a lost kingdom whose name we may never know. Every civilization leaves a legacy. Some build towering monuments, others craft stories passed through generations. But what if the most fragile and irreplaceable legacy of all isn't written in stone or scripture, but in DNA itself? Laos was once called the land of a million elephants, a title that symbolized its rich culture and deep connection to the natural world. But just as its elephants are fading from a landscape, so too are the ancient genetic signatures that define its people. Scientists warn that the very bloodlines that once shaped this nation are now on the brink of vanishing forever. Recent genetic studies reveal an alarming truth. Some of Laos' rarest Y-chromosome lineages are disappearing with each passing generation. Why? The answer lies in a combination of urban migration, cultural assimilation, and declining birth rates among isolated ethnic groups. As younger generations move to cities and intermarry, the unique genetic markers of their ancestors are slowly being erased, replaced by more dominant regional lineages. But it's not just human DNA at risk. Laos' natural world is facing the same crisis. The country's elephant population has plummeted from thousands to a mere few hundred. And in a twist of fate, the very same genetic science used to track human ancestry is now being used to save these gentle giants. Researchers are using DNA extracted from elephant dung to map family trees, prevent inbreeding, and design a breeding plan that could keep the species from disappearing entirely. The parallels are haunting. Just as genetic diversity is essential for the survival of elephants, it is equally critical for the survival of human cultures. Each genetic branch that disappears takes with it an untold history, a forgotten migration, a lost way of life. But there is hope. By studying and preserving DNA, scientists can help safeguard Laos' human and animal heritage before it's too late. Efforts are already underway to create genetic databases of Laos' diverse ethnic groups, ensuring that future generations can still trace their roots back to the earliest civilizations that walked this land. Yet this is a race against time. Will science be enough to preserve what centuries of history could not? Or will the last traces of these ancient lineages vanish, leaving only echoes in the DNA of those who remain? Deep in the heart of Southeast Asia, hidden beneath layers of history and myth, lies a genetic story waiting to be told. For centuries, the Lao people have passed down their traditions, their languages, and their customs. But what if the most profound connection to their past was never written in manuscripts or carved into temple walls, but instead encoded in their very DNA? Recent genetic studies have unlocked an ancient migration mystery. The DNA of modern Lao people holds traces of two major prehistoric expansions, one that brought the Austroasiatic-speaking farmers thousands of years ago, and another that carried Taikadai speakers from southern China. But while history books tell of kingdoms and conquests, DNA tells a different tale, one of lost voices, forgotten civilizations, and ancient bloodlines that still flow through the people of Laos today. Some of these lineages can be traced back over 10,000 years, older than the first recorded civilizations of the region. They connect the Lao people to ancestors who survived shifting climates, crossed mountains and rivers, and built entire societies long before the rise of Lan Xang or the influence of the Khmer Empire. Yet, many of these genetic markers are fading, swallowed by time and assimilation. One of the most startling discoveries is the stark difference between paternal and maternal genetic histories in Laos. Y chromosome DNA, passed from father to son, shows evidence of dominant lineages spreading through conquest and migration. But mitochondrial DNA, inherited only from mothers, tells a more stable and diverse story, one of ancient local populations, resilient through generations, holding onto their traditions even as new waves of settlers arrived. This genetic divide suggests something remarkable. While kingdoms rose and fell, while armies moved across borders, the everyday lives of the people, especially the women, preserved a deeper, unbroken connection to the land. It is a silent but powerful testament to their endurance, etched into the very fabric of their DNA. But how much longer will these ancestral echoes remain? With globalization, intermarriage, and urbanization reshaping the genetic landscape, unique markers that once defined entire ethnic groups are slowly blending into larger, regional identities. If we could hear the voices of the past, what would they tell us? Would they warn us of their vanishing stories? Or would they remind us that their legacy is still alive, in the blood of millions, waiting to be understood before it's lost forever? For thousands of years, the DNA of the Lao people has carried the silent history of migration, adaptation, and survival. But today, that genetic legacy stands at a crossroads. Will it endure, or will the story it tells be lost forever? Scientists studying the human genome have uncovered a troubling reality. Genetic diversity in Laos is shrinking. In the past, isolated communities preserved unique bloodlines, each holding clues to ancient migrations and civilizations. But with rapid modernization, intermarriage, and migration, these once distinct genetic signatures are blending at an unprecedented rate. What took thousands of years to shape could disappear within just a few generations. This change isn't just happening in Laos. Around the world, indigenous and ethnic groups are facing the same genetic erosion. Unique lineages that survived wars, famines, and climate shifts are now vanishing not because of conquest, but because of progress. The question is this a natural evolution, or are we erasing something valuable? Genetic research could hold the key to preserving this legacy. By mapping the DNA of modern Lao populations, scientists can piece together the missing links in Southeast Asian history. They can uncover lost connections between ancient civilizations, trace forgotten migration routes, and even identify genetic adaptations that helped early humans survive in Laos' rugged landscape. But time is running out. One of the most urgent challenges is the declining elephant population in Laos, a crisis that strangely mirrors the fate of its people's genetic heritage. Once called the land of 1,000,000 elephants, Laos now has fewer than 1,000 left. Conservationists are racing to use DNA analysis to track and protect the remaining elephants. Could a similar effort help safeguard the genetic diversity of the Lao people before it's too late? We often think of history as something written in books, carved in stone, or passed down through stories. But the most intimate and irreplaceable record of the past is written within us, within our DNA. If we lose it, we don't just lose scientific data. We lose the last echoes of civilizations that lived, thrived, and shaped the identity of an entire nation. So, what will the future hold? Will the DNA of Laos remain a vibrant thread in the fabric of human history, or will it fade into obscurity? One last echo before it's gone forever?